Good afternoon. Hi, my name's Jonathan Hedger. I'm the Marketing Director for Kolabtree. I'm here to talk to you today because we're at a turning point in the way that we conduct scientific research. With the UK in particular struggling to recruit, it's time we turned our attention to alternative means of recruitment, such as hiring freelancers. It's true that there are challenges in terms of hiring freelancers, but hopefully today I can give you an idea of how to overcome some of those challenges and how to tap into the immense talent that exists within this pool. So what are the challenges facing the UK? It's true that science skills are essential if the UK is to maintain its leading position, particularly in medical research and development. The skill shortage is costing the UK £1.5 billion a year in terms of temporary staffing, recruitment, and inflated salaries. CIPD estimates that 77% of businesses are needing to accelerate salary increases in order to recruit and retain staff. There's also question marks over Brexit and what that means in terms of research and development and funding. In many countries, including the US and the UK, PhDs are graduating at a faster rate than there are jobs for those PhDs. Less than 50% of PhDs now are going into academic jobs, meaning that it's more common for PhDs to find an alternative career. A survey by the Royal Society in 2010 found that less than 0.45% of PhDs are now going on to become professors. In the US, private sector employment for science and engineering PhDs is on par with education institutions. So there's more opportunities for PhDs outside of academia, but it's hard for businesses, especially small businesses, to access this talent. Collaboration between education and business has traditionally been driven by universities and big companies. Big pharma especially has the resources to find experts it needs, but for smaller businesses it's much more difficult, especially if it's a short-term project and they're looking for talent that's local to them, that has the right skills for a fair price, and that individual has the availability. Then there's the additional complexities of non-disclosure agreements, contracts, potentially expensive solicitors, which makes hiring talent even more difficult for small businesses. One way to solve this is through the gig economy. More and more freelancers are transitioning away from full-time employment into freelance and remote work. It's estimated that by 2020, so next year, over 50% of workers will be in the UK and the US will be working remotely. Freelancing allows people to work on their own hours, choose their own holidays, and even decide on the projects on which they want to work, so they can choose projects which are more interesting to them. They can also work with any organisation in the world, so those geographic boundaries are removed. There's no travel restrictions, there's no visa restrictions. Buffer, in a recent survey, found that of all workers currently working remotely, 99% want to continue working remotely for at least some of the time for the rest of their careers. Independent professionals make up 25% of all those working in professional, scientific, and technical work. That's a study by the European Forum of Independent Professionals. The number of independent professionals increased from less than 6.2 million in 2004 to 8.9 million in 2013, making them the fastest growing group in the EU labour market. So we can see there's a huge shift of workers moving from full-time contract work to freelancing and working remotely. In terms of the gig economy, the headlines have been dominated by companies like Uber and Deliveroo, who've given the perception that freelancing is damaging to society, mainly due to the vulnerability and poor rights of workers within those areas. But rather than avoiding the subject and avoiding freelancers, we should recognize the immense talent that exists amongst these knowledge professionals and figure out how to grow it in a moral way. Collabtree was founded to democratize science by providing a mechanism to access talented knowledge professionals for all businesses, regardless of their size. At her previous organization, Kolabtree founder and CEO Ashmita Das was looking for a computer scientist, PhD, to help solve a specific problem that they were facing within their organization. She found it extremely difficult to find someone with a PhD, and when she did, it was difficult to find someone that was interested for the budget that she had available. She realized that this wasn't a problem exclusive to her organization. It was actually something that was common to a lot of organizations, especially the smaller organizations. Kolabtree now attracts over 400 projects per month and has over 10,000 registered freelancers. Just to give you an idea of how it works, any organization that's looking for the expertise of a scientist or an academic or researcher can come to Kolabtree and post their project. They post their project on the website. It then becomes visible to experts who the Kolabtree team, anyone that they think is relevant, has the right skills, experience, or expertise, will be invited to bid on that project. The experts come and bid on the project. The client is then able to see those bids and is able to enter into dialogue with those experts. So they can have a Skype call with them, for example, so that they can demonstrate that they have the ability to complete the project. At that point, the client can award that project to whichever expert it thinks is best qualified for it. That freelancer can then begin the work, and then when the work is complete, the expert will release payment to the freelancer. So freelancers can determine their own prices, encouraging them to charge a fair wage. In most cases, with Kolabtree, the projects that we get are primarily projects that can be done remotely. So a lot of statistical analysis and writing projects, for example. Our customers have included laboratories, hospitals, government organizations, entrepreneurs, contract research organizations, pretty much all types of organization. So why would a PhD that's worked so hard leave academia or industry to go freelance? So freelancing offers an additional option at a time when opportunities are declining in research and academia. The labour market is split into two, well-paid established scientists with permanent contracts and young scientists who act as cheap temporary staff. So as you have these PhDs graduating, you can see that there's a problem coming through. Some researchers have reportedly pursued 6 to 10 postdoc jobs after their PhDs without any signs of stability. A recent study found 38 EU and EU partner countries, a significant proportion of early career researchers had fixed-term contracts or no contracts at all. 90% were in precarious positions with less than 2 years left on their contracts. In contrast, 90% of senior researchers were in permanent positions. Half of scientists are now leaving academia after 5 years. So what are their options? The UK's national unemployment has fallen to 4.1%, which is its lowest since 1975. At the same time, there's a huge rise in self-employment and freelancing, which has risen from 3.3 million in 2001 to 4.8 in 2017. So what are the attractions of freelancing? Freelancing can benefit both early career researchers and experienced scientists. So they can, for example, work on high impact industry projects and build a good portfolio. The brands that you see here are just a small sample of the brands that have come to Collabtree needing help from an expert. So by freelancing, it doesn't preclude them from working with some well-known and very reputable organizations. We also, of course, have projects from much smaller, lesser-known organizations and startups as well. But it does mean that they're able to continue to build a good portfolio. In doing so, of course, they enhance their skills, and as I said before, they can work from anywhere. So rather than making themselves available to organizations that exist within a commutable distance to where they live, they're actually opening a global pool of opportunities. So really the only barrier is time zones. Of course, while they're doing this, they're earning a suitable consulting fee. What about the benefits of working with a freelancer? So the benefits to businesses or organizations. So firstly, you can rapidly access deeply specialist skills on demand. The 10,000 experts on Kolabtree, as an example, work across a variety of disciplines. We have 2,500 disciplines on the website. So if there's a particular area of expertise that you're looking for, there's a high probability that they will already exist somewhere as a freelancer. You can access a global talent pool, so rather than finding the best expert that's local to where you are, you're able to find the best expert in the world that's available right now to help on a freelance basis. And it makes an efficient use of your time and budget. So if in your organization there's a certain skill that you're lacking and you need help with a specific problem, rather than going through the traditional means, so hiring someone, for example, by posting an advert on a job website, waiting for the applications to come through, running first round telephone interviews, first round face-to-face interviews, second round face-to-face interviews, and then offering a contract, which they may or may not accept. And if they do, you may have a month or 3 months notice period. There's a lot of expertise that's available on demand. So in terms of time and budget, there's some fantastic advantages. You can interact before hiring, so you have the peace of mind. You have open platforms and closed platforms. So Collabtree we consider to be an open platform because before you make any commitment, you're able to have a dialogue and face-to-face interaction with the experts. So you don't make any commitment until you're convinced that they're able to help you, or they can convince you that they're able to help you. Non-disclosure agreements, so a lot of the projects that we get are commercially sensitive. So most projects you can see on the website, on Collabtree. There's a large number also that you can't see because they're commercially sensitive. In those situations, we allow clients to select exactly who it is that they wish to see that project. And at the point that the project is awarded, or actually beforehand, it's possible to have non-disclosure agreements signed. And finally, you don't miss out on specialist projects. So if, for example, you're a laboratory and something comes your way and you don't have the specialist skills within the team currently in order to be able to take that project on, it means that you can tap into some external resource to help with that in terms of a freelancer. And the additional benefit, of course, is that they can then pass that knowledge to your team. So how do you work with a freelancer? So just a few points of advice here. So there are multiple freelancing platforms out there. A lot of them are quite generalist. Probably the biggest in the world is called Upwork. If you were to post a specialist project on Upwork, you no doubt would get a lot of interest and a lot of applications, but the likelihood that they're going to be good quality applications from well-skilled and well-qualified people is quite low. So the first thing to do is make sure that you're posting your project onto a platform that fits with your niche. Is it trustworthy? So look for trust marks, see if there's reviews, positive reviews on the website. Also, in most cases with these freelancing platforms, the payment is made with a credit card. So you want to make sure that they're PCI compliant, payment card industry compliant, so that there's a secure environment there for you to make payment. Also with open platforms, you're able to view the profiles without even having to create an account. So that's always a great thing to do. If there's a particular specialist you're looking for, go onto the website, do a search, and you'll see how many of those specialists they have. Probably the most important point is around the goal of the project. It's crucial that you have absolute clarity in the brief, because that has a direct impact on your likelihood of succeeding with recruitment. And finally, communicating with the freelancer. Just make sure that you do have the ability to connect with them before you make any commitment, so you can have a conversation with them on the phone or over Skype or Zoom, for example. In some instances, we do have clients that bring experts into their business, so there is an opportunity for face-to-face. But in our case, most of the time it's remote work. Just an example of some of the projects. So we have a lot of projects that come through looking for biostatisticians or data analysts to help verify methodology, validate experiments, conduct statistical reviews, for example. So we're not suggesting that freelancers can necessarily replace people that are working in the laboratory, but if there are people working in the laboratory who need to then do write-ups or need to do their statistical analysis, that's the kind of thing that you can outsource using a freelance platform. Similarly, freelance statisticians to verify research data, conduct systematic reviews, design experiments, these kind of things. So just to conclude, I've got a couple of case studies here of clients that have come to us for help. So the first one is a company called Chemo Mouthpiece, which is a US-based company, which was actually founded by a guy who himself was a cancer survivor. And during the radiotherapy, he was experienced some mouth ulcers, which were extremely painful. In the hospital, they gave him ice, which gave him some relief, but he realized after he'd recovered that there was an opportunity here to create a product to offer more effective relief for other people that would be in a similar situation. So he called that product Chemo Mouthpiece, and it was his chief operating officer that came to us looking for help. It was actually two projects that they needed help with. So the first project was firstly understanding what had been done in this area before. So had there been any previous research done around relief for ulcers during radiotherapy? So it was some secondary research, literature review. That was the first part of it, and the second part of it was after the product had been created, putting together the technical documentation. He posted his project. He received 2 bids within 24 hours. Most of our projects get bids within the first 24 hours. He hired an experienced scientific researcher called Dr. Kiranam Chatty, who has a PhD in pharmacology. And Dr. Kiranam turned that project around in 20 days, and that cost the client just under $3,000, which is much less than he would have paid going through traditional means. This next case study, this is a Mexico-based company called Alhambra Medical, who had created a surveillance system for studying stomach tissue. They were looking for help to verify results for pre-clinical trial before publication. So it's specifically a biostatistician that they were looking for. They received 14 bids, and they hired Petra Coupens, who had a PhD in medical scientists, an experienced statistician. That project was turned around in a week and cost $500. So just an example of the types of projects, and we have a huge variety of different projects that come through. Those are just a couple of examples. So just to conclude, the next time you find yourself in a position where there's a certain type of expertise that perhaps is missing within your organization, think about freelancers, because there's a huge pool of expertise that exists out there, and they're becoming more and more accessible. Thank you. Any questions?
It's not really a question, it's more of a statement, and I'll let you feedback on it. This is all for postdoctoral researchers. A lot of postdoctoral researchers I work with as a technician are not skills specialists. You know, because I work in biological sciences, this isn't appropriate. This is mainly for statisticians, preparatory work. The technical skills that are missing are at bench. How can you help with that?
Yeah, so in that example, it's probably more organisations that are looking for specialist skills where we specialise. So it's more experienced PhDs rather than the bench skills that you described.
But there's lots of those around, there's lots of statisticians available, you can take it to companies as well that will produce all these statistical analysis for you. Where the major skills are missing are at bench. So we need people that are going to drive those sorts of things. We're finding young researchers, not necessarily PhDs. I have personally done the work for at least 3 PhD projects in the last 2 years that have just been written up by the PhD students. They've not actually done any of the work themselves. So I'm a skills specialist, but you wouldn't come to me, you'd go to them.
That's a fair point, yeah.
I missed the start of your presentation. Where do you get these freelancers from?
So the freelancers, we're not actually very active in terms of our pursuit of freelancers. A lot of our freelancers come to us from universities all over the world, normally because they're actively looking for opportunities to do freelancing work. And normally they start that search with Google, and that's where they find us. We are also partnering with universities, so that those that have areas that they particularly specialize in, we're able to connect their experts with organizations that are looking for help.
So do you check their qualifications, or is the only some person looking for the freelancers to do all the background?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we make as much information available as possible to the person that's ultimately going to be doing the hiring. So for example, all of the expert profiles connect with ORCID. So if they have any published papers, for example, those come through on their profile. They put their qualifications on there as well. And we always encourage clients to actually have a conversation and validate whether they think that that is the right person for them before they do the hiring. So we make as much information available to the client as possible so that they can make that judgment call, but ultimately it's up to them. Any more questions? Thank you very much.